I was talking about. So as I was, exploring both the new fascinating realms of human emotion, I, it that's a confusing time for anybody, but when you're trying to put it in your art too, it can be a little extra confusing. For me, it was, at least. I can't say that for everybody, because here's a visual representation of what you're trying to feel and go through, and then what you're also trying to convey to people who are important to you. I gotta get my hands framed better. I had this one piece in particular. I forget what I called it, and I ended up selling it to somebody. But it's these two figures just kind of embracing, and it's very simple. It's like one of the least complicated pieces I've ever done. There's not a lot of bells and whistles on it. It's just two figures kind of hugging it out, and that was one that I don't want to say I was proud of, because it's pretty simplistic. I mean, not that I was like ashamed of it, but it was just it meant something to me for what it represented. And when I sold it eventually, it was to someone who I knew and who is important to me. But yeah, that was just an odd. I think that was the first time I had sold something that I like, a piece that I cared about. Because normally, if I had a piece that I was selling, it was just. Sorry, I heard a sound. It was just a piece. It was just a sculpture. Usually, it's a commission. I do a lot of commissions. Which also, I have an Etsy store. It's called Storybook Steel. I will put a link somewhere on this video, and you should go check it out. And even if you don't see something you like, you should get a commission of something you do like. That's what this is. That's where this came from. This particular Star Wars character. They bought something several years ago, and then hit me up a little bit ago saying, "Hey, I would like another Star Wars character, please." And I said, "Absolutely. That will not be an issue." But yeah, I don't know. It has been an interesting journey, learning new techniques, and it's actually kind of funny. A very good friend of mine, in over the past few years, has kind of been the inspiration for me figuring out a lot of other techniques, and like developing new things that I had never tried before, because I would have very strong, like it went from me fumbling at emotions in sculptures to like this very intense, like, no, I actually need to do, I can't say what I need to, but I can sculpt it. Or if I can't sculpt it, I can figure out how to sculpt it, and then I'll sculpt it. Like one of the things that I've gotten very good at since then is bird wings, or like, feathered wings. I don't think I've ever done just a regular bird, but it's feathered wings often on other figures. I recently did a Pegasus for the first time, and those wings were banger. Those turned out great. But for the longest time before I had met this individual, I had always said, "Oh, I can't do bird wings. That's way too complicated. There's no way. There's no way I could ever do it." And then I said, "Well, this piece ain't gonna work with that bird wings. Guess I'm learning bird wings," and I did, and they turned out pretty good. I think I was very happy with them at the time, and I'm still happy with them. I actually don't ever know I don't know where that piece ended up. I'll have to ask what happened to it at some point. But that I've done several pieces for that person, and they have all been, not all, but almost all of them have been firsts for me. Like what was the other one? Oh, I did life-size hands. It was a pair of hands kind of clasping, and that is the first time I'd ever done, and it's just hands. Like, I didn't do full arms or anything, because I haven't done a full human figure yet, because that's ridiculous. And one day, maybe, but it was, yeah, human-sized hands. Um, that was a first, and again, that was very fun and interesting to work on. Um, those were a lot of fun. I need to do something like that again. It's fun. You'll see a lot of trees. You'll see a lot of other wire artists who will do trees, and I personally am very adverse to trees because you see it everywhere and they're very easy to do. So I try to stick more to figure work. And nothing against the artists who choose to do trees, but it's just it is a medium that you see rarely enough that I don't want to do the one thing that everyone, or not ever, that a lot of people who already work in this medium already do. Because they're like, if you want a wire tree, you can get a wire tree. You don't need to get a wire tree from me. But the one tree that I have done was for this friend because they asked for it. They said, hey, you should make me a tree. And I said, yeah, I'm gonna make a tree. So I did. And it was new and interesting, and because I was very disdainful of, not disdainful, I was happy to do it, but I didn't want to just make just a tree. I could never just do, I didn't want to do a straightforward tree. So what I did with each branch was a separate braid. I took 3 different colors of wire and braided them together, and that would be a branch. And then I would make 3 of those, braid that together into like a big thicker branch, as you know, trees split and grow and do all the stuff. So it was this, I forget how many different strands were in it, but it was braids on braids on braids on braids. So then like the trunk was this very thick, very centralized thing, but if you looked closely at each thing, it was braids within braids within braids within braids, and then I did some bead work on the tips of the branches to be like blooms. I'll have to dig up a picture of it somewhere. I was very happy with it because, yeah, I didn't want to just do like a tree, because if I did it like I'm doing this, where I'm just wrapping it over itself, a tree would take 20 minutes and be a cakewalk. Other firsts that I've done for that friend. Oh, the first bit of jewelry I ever did was a big wire crown for them. They had they were shooting for a contest and pulling for first, and I was of the mind, I was like, well, whether or not they get first, they are first in the minds and hearts of this particular sculptor. So I went ahead and made a big crown for them, and that was a lot of work. I kind of not overcommitted because I didn't tell them about it. I just did it because I am a goober. But I don't know. I had a fun time with that one. It was very fun to make, and that was another one that I put a lot of feeling into when I did it. Or I think I did. I hope that came through. You'll have to let me know. So we are approaching done on this armature. We're not quite there. What? Can I help you? Alright. My cat's crying at me. How long has this been going? I don't know. I'll figure that out. Hands are another thing. I know I talked about doing the life-size hands, but when I first started out, I was so bad at hands. I was absolute trash at hands because I tried to wrap them too thickly. I would make the hands and then try to make them look really tight and really like sharp, and they'd get way too bulky and it'd be sausage fingers all day, and it was terrible. It was bad. I was bad at hands. Over time, I've developed new practices for that, and I think they look a lot better than they used to. Sorry if this is just kind of rambling. It's kind of my first time doing something like this, and I didn't really plan it out overly much. I was just kind of like, I'm going to sit and I'm going to work on something. I'm going to set a goal, and now we have over the course of this of our time together, established my goal of whenever I finish this armature, I think I'm gonna call it. But this has been nice. I've enjoyed talking. Please do let me know if there's anything I can do better. Again, I tried to do a decent setup for this first time, but if there's something, if the audio is not coming through great, if you would like different angles, let me know. I don't. My expertise does not lie in videography or streaming or whatever you want to call it. It is in sculpting. That is my primary skill set is not even like sculpting in general, sculpting in wire, and that is it. But I like it. It's fun. One of I think the most ambitious piece. Well, no, I've got one in the works now that's more ambitious, but until it's done, I can't really claim it as being my most ambitious piece because it's not done yet. But I am excited to finish it. But the most ambitious completed piece is, can you please stop? It was this big dragon that I worked on with the friend of mine who learned how to do a basic figure. He helped me out with this big dragon that had a 2-foot wingspan. So it was pretty honking big, and we used a much thicker gauge. I forget how heavy it was exactly. We weighed it at one point, but I've forgotten. Please go away. Because it's been several years ago that we did this. We were in middle school when we did that. But it was gigantic. It was absurdly large. It was larger than it ever needed to be. But it was a lot of fun. Well, it was and was not a lot of fun to work on. It was a lot of fun to work on, but there was an incident